Thank you for joining us again and welcome back to our channel. If you are joining for the first time, I appreciate your time. Listen folks, here we talk geopolitics on how the continent of Africa engage its strategic partners from around the world. It is important to know that geopolitics is a brutal game and can affect the food on your table, and election has consequences. Listen, as we continue to dive into the strategic engagement that the world continues to face, the chaos is almost everywhere. But before I dive into today's episode with regards to what the president of Ukraine has come out clear and reminded the United States of America that it is not going to be business as usual. Let me read this first. There will be no deal behind Ukraine's back, and that Europe should be on the table when all of this is going to be happening. Something in that lines. It is interesting how Ukraine is turning all of a sudden to realize that the United States of America might not be a strategic partner from what they perceived. A firing speech in Germany, the Munich conference, the security conference in Germany, has reminded Europe that it is about time to step up to its own security.
Ukraine will never accept deals made behind our backs without our involvement. And the same rule should apply to all of Europe. No decisions about Ukraine without Ukraine, no decisions about Europe without Europe. Europe must have a seat at the table when decisions about Europe are being made.
Like the president of South Africa, when he traveled to the country of Ukraine and to Russia to talk about the peace issue, he reminded the Ukrainian government that it is important to start looking at the peaceful route with regards to this conflict, because at the end of the day, it's going to boil down to peace. And it seems as if Ukraine is about to learn the hard way. Let's roll this speech.
Zelensky said Ukraine could never accept peace talks without Kiev's involvement, a message meant for President Trump. He called a meeting between Trump and Putin without the presence of Ukrainians or Europeans dangerous.
Some in Europe may be frustrated with Brussels, but let's be clear. If not Brussels, then Moscow. It's your decision.
Zelensky also took questions from our own Christian Amanpour. He talked the mixed messages from Washington and also the need for continued dialogue.
Do you understand what America's position is?
Yes.
Which is?
I think, to my mind, they are preparing atmosphere for their dialogue.
For their dialogue, which will be?
For the dialogue between Trump and Putin. And I think this is, it's up to them, but they can discuss everything they want, but not about Ukraine without us. And that's why in this case, especially in this case, I think it's a little bit dangerous. That's why I said that we need to talk more with the president and to talk more with his people, with his teams. Yesterday, as you said, yes, we had good conversation, and I think that I opened some new details for vice president. That's why I said we need. It's not waste time. It's really very important, I think, diplomatic investment for the future, just and lasting peace for Ukraine.
Election has consequences, and Ukraine has come to realize that, why am I talking about this? African countries came under enormous pressure with regards to the Russian-Ukrainian war. Looking at the United Nations, the position that they took, South Africa was lambasted with regards to its non-aligned position. Eritrea came under incredible pressure. Sudan and a number of countries across the continent of Africa, each choosing different position, and the continent was split with regards to this particular war. And for the president of Ukraine to only realize after the huge geopolitical shift in the United States of America that the continent of Africa was basically saying that they don't really want to get into a particular conflict that has nothing to do with their own region. That the reason they traveled, that the African leaders and the South African president who led that delegation was as a result of talking about the Black Sea deal grain issues that should be released. Actually, it wasn't supposed to be released only to the continent of Africa, to other countries around the world, but it was perceived as a begging mission. That prompted South Africa's president to say this in Paris.
That yes, we will give you that and that. And let me tell you something that generated a lot of resentment. We were all at one, that even as we were going to address an issue of the war which has had a negative impact on the African continent, which is the rise in prices for food, rise in prices for fertilizers, we were clear that we are not going there as beggars. We are not going to ask for a favor to both Ukraine and Russia. We were going there to say, open up the Black Sea Channel so that the grains and the fertilizers should go into the world market. So we were not on a begging mission, even as we are in great need as a continent and all that. That should go to demonstrate that Africa should never be seen as a continent that needs generosity. We want to be treated as equals.
Mr. Zelensky has come to a point. We've seen Zelensky travel around the world, but this is the most emotional speech that I've ever seen him come out and talk about the current situation. It has come to the realization that there's been a fundamental shake up with regards to the geopolitical environment. And at the moment, he's screaming that there won't be any negotiation or discussion without the people of Ukraine. I think that is important. And it goes back to the African governments or the delegation that went there. They were pulling the strings behind, but they were perceived as beggars with regards to their approach. They were looking at the reason why this conflict is affecting a number of particular things in the continent of Africa and a number of countries around the world. Looking at fuel prices across Europe, and Europe at the time thought that this conflict was only going to impact certain regions, despite the fact that it affected energy situation in the continent of Europe. But at the moment, a number of European countries are observing very closely, and that's why Mr. Zelensky is coming out now and saying that this particular peace talk in the horizon will be catastrophic if Ukraine is not on the table, and will be devastating for Europe if Europe itself cannot have a say to an extent. And it's fundamental for the Ukrainian people to start realizing that there's been a huge shift in the United States of America. The forever war is not going to continue. That's the reason why the President of the United States of America, Mr. Donald Trump, and his Vice President have caused stir in the country of Germany, coming out clear, and it has prompted Mr. Zelensky to say this on CNN.
You said Putin doesn't want peace. I mean, you just said it loud and clear here.
It's true.
So what is the dialogue? And have you convinced the Americans that A, Ukraine has to be at the table, and B, I guess the Europeans have to convince them that they have. Did you get a commitment from President Trump that you would meet with him first? Do you have a plan to meet with the president?
No, we have our plan, of course. It's our country, and that's why it's our plan.
All right, let's go now to CNN's chief national security correspondent, Alex Marquardt. Alex, in his remarks, Zelensky said it would be dangerous for President Trump to meet with Putin before him. Also talked about this army for and of Europe.
Africa is a strategic region in the world, and the continent may have perceived what's going to happen ahead. Russia, on the other hand, has close ties with a number of African nations. The United States of America has its own interest in the continent of Africa. But at the moment that South Africa and the United States are logging hands with regards to the current comments by the United States of America's president And the current United States of America Secretary of State, Mr. Marco Rubio, saying that he's not going to travel to South Africa for whatever reason. It is interesting to know that Mr. Zelensky also understands the strategic importance of the decision that is about to take place. The discussion in terms of peace that will take place without Ukraine will have a very consequential issue with regards to Ukraine's existence. And that's the reason why the current Ukrainian officials are coming out clear, complaining that the United States, to an extent, the promises that were being made might not be achieved with certain area. Let's roll this clip because this particular official said something very vital and very emotional in regards to how she perceived the United States of America's interaction and support promised the Ukrainian people. Let's roll the clip.
Well, yesterday we were listening also to the defense minister of Ukraine, and actually it was quite painful to hear all the promises that they have been given. And he was referring to, Ukraine had nuclear weapons, and they were persuaded that give up your nuclear weapons, destroy your nuclear weapons, and we will provide you security guarantees so that Russia would never attack you again. And so they did, because they believed in the United States who gave these kind of promises. So he was explaining in a very painful way that, what are these security guarantees that we can really believe in? And I think, what we need to answer is that, the security guarantee that is the strongest and that really works is a NATO membership. And it's actually also the cheapest security guarantee because it really deters Russia. Now, when it comes to, that this is off the table, that it was said, then we need to answer the questions that what do we really mean? And every 27 countries or whoever is supporting Ukraine needs to answer that question. If you say we give you security guarantees, what do you mean? Are you willing to send your troops on the ground? Are you willing to provide, capabilities and ammunition? And if so, then in what amount, so that it would actually deter or any future wars and conflicts? So, these are the questions that need to be answered by all the supporters or security guarantee givers.
Africa as a continent should wake up to continue to re-engage its partners, review its relationship and partnership, to understand that it has its own destiny in its own hands, that they do not have to and will not. They should never rely on strategic partners to lead them forward. The countries of the Sahelian state have realized that they are making the move to figure out their own sovereignty. It is important to note that the United States of America clearly understand the strategic importance of the continent of Africa and South Africa. However, that is being ignored. Under Joe Biden, it was interesting to know that Joe Biden visited the continent of Africa at the last month of his presidency. And a number of things are happening in the region. At that particular time, in regards to this conflict, the Ukrainian foreign minister was across the continent of Africa to talk about peace, to arrange and work African governments' hands to make the vote at the United Nations in New York. However, it is important to note that Africa have other strategic interests at the moment. The continent is facing huge challenges with regards to growth, development, economic prosperity, and a number of young graduates coming out from universities. And the United States of America's perception in regards to global engagement and Africa's own position and challenges would always clash. As Mr. Marco Rubio has said, the foreign policy will be based on United States of America's interests. That may not sit well. And the country of Ukraine have come to a realization that at the moment, it's not going to be business as usual. And Europe has woken up. Again, credit to Mr. Macron, who came out and said that Europe should stand up on its own security and not follow the United States behind, just like as an ally. However, it is important to know that Germany, to an extent, and France are beginning to focus on what's going to happen the next 4 years. And the current speech by JD Vance, the Vice President of the United States of America to Germany, is a wake-up call for Europe and Africans, governments and officials have realized that the continent needs to start picking up itself. Let me know in the comment section what you think in regards to why Mr. Zelensky is realizing at the moment that it's not going to be business as usual. And what do you think Ukraine should do? Should the talks go ahead between the United States of America and Russia without Ukraine? Or where should Europe place its own priorities at the moment? I will be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Smash the like button and watch other informative content as we continue to grow this platform to enhance your experience with regards to how Africa engage its strategic partners. For now, I will be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.